We are the Ministry of the Real Truth. Today we ask, how reliable is Tacitus, the Roman historian, and his account or statements about the Jews who were slaves in Egypt according to the Bible, etc. We shall look into the history of Tacitus and bring the results from several sources with links to them to see actually how reliable he is or unreliable, and shouldn't be taken literally. He shouldn't be trusted. First, we'll start with Shaka Amos with Dr. Ali Muhammad, where Shaka Amos makes a statement. We shall view that video from YouTube.
I'm ready to do. Yeah.
All right. So
you see that?
This is one of the annals of Tacitus. Tacitus.
You got that shot? Did you read that one?
Yeah.
See, the problem with Tacitus and Pliny and those guys is that you have to understand that when Rome wrote history, it was very politicized.
I know, but that's why you have to cross-reference. History is about cross-references.
Right.
Because when you find synchronicity based on cross-references,
right,
and you find multiple cross-references,
right,
that's how you establish a fact. All right. So I'm showing this
and
first.
The further apart the sources are, the better.
There you go. There you go. There you go. So when you deal with,
in other words, use the two Roman sources to prove one subject.
No, exactly. So I this is why I want you to come, because I'm into procedure.
Right.
When it comes to scholarship,
sure,
not just the information.
Well,
and that helps.
I'll cheat in 2 seconds.
Now I asked him this question, Brother Shaka. You wasn't here, and I'm gonna ask him again.
Now look what I did. I'm a teacher. See, I'm a teacher. See, when we talk, we
smart boy, right?
Yeah. So we can see if we want to write something. We can.
Cool.
Yeah. See, because I'm gonna show you a clear point in scholastics that gets people confused and people going talking fast. He just talked about these people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can just kind of spell it like that, right?
Uh-huh.
This is not the people who I'm talking about.
Change the B. I'll put a B there.
No. If I'm going to be there, let's put it.
All right.
Haribu.
I like it.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That's not what I'm talking about.
I like that.
All right. Now, I can go from Latin back to what I'm talking about.
Ooh.
You see what I'm saying? And then march back to the language that those particular people spoke in the Caucasus Mountains.
Let's get it. Okay, I like it.
Okay, so basically they stated about Tacitus. Shaka Amos on the left stated that people have to understand that with Tacitus being a Roman and Rome being very political, he would have been very Roman politically oriented. So we are looking at sources online that talk about Tacitus or reveal what he was like. Publius Cornelius Tacitus, known as Tacitus, born AD 56, died around 120, was a Roman historian and politician. Tacitus is widely regarded as one of the greatest Roman historians by modern scholars. The surviving portions of his two major works, the Annals, Latin Annales, and the Histories, Latin Historiae, examine the reigns of the emperors Tiberius, Claudius Nero, and those who reigned in the year of the four emperors, 69 AD. These two works span the history of the Roman Empire from the death of Augustus, 14 AD, to the death of Domitian, 96 AD, although there are some substantial lacunae in the surviving text. What's that? A lacunae. A gap in the manuscript inscription, text, painting, or musical work. A manuscript text or section suffering from gaps is said to be lacunosa or lacunulosa or lacunulosa, however you say that. Tacitus' other writings discuss oratory and dialogue format, Germania and the life of his father-in-law, Agricola, the general responsible for much of the Roman conquest of Britain, mainly focusing on his campaign in Britannia. Tacitus' annals are of interest for providing an early account of the persecution of Christians and one of the earliest extra-biblical references to the crucifixion of Jesus, because he declares in his writings that he came across a record of his prefector, one who had authority at that time, Pontius Pilatus, which states that he put on trial Jesus the Christ, or the Christos, and had him executed. There's information about his life. Details about the personal life of Tacitus are scarce. What little is known comes from scattered hints throughout his work, the letters of his friend and admirer Pliny the Younger. A lawyer, author and magistrate of ancient Rome. Pliny's uncle Pliny the Elder helped raise and educate him. Okay, so details about the personal life of Tacitus are scarce. What little is known comes from scattered hints throughout his work, the letters of his friend and admirer Pliny the Younger, and an inscription found at Milasa in Caria. Tacitus was born in 56 or 57 to an equestrian family. The place and date of his birth, as well as his praenomen, first name, are not known. In the letters of Sidonius Apollinaris, his name is Gaius, but in the major surviving manuscripts of his work, his name is given as Publius. One scholar's suggestion of the name Sextus has been largely rejected. There's information about his family and early life. Most of the older aristocratic families failed to survive the proscriptions, a decree of condemnation to death or banishment, which took place at the end of the Republic, because Rome was a republic, right? Became a republic. And Tacitus makes it clear that he owed his rank to the Flavian emperors. The claim that he was descended from a freedman is derived from a speech in his writings which asserts that many senators and knights were descended from freedmen, Annals 1327, but this is generally disputed. And he goes on about his articles, and his father, his public life and marriage. As a young man, Tacitus studied rhetoric in Rome to prepare for a career in law and politics. Like Pliny, he may have studied under Quintilian, 35 AD to 100. In 77 or 78, he married Julia Agricola, daughter of the famous General Agricola. Little was known of the domestic life, save that Tacitus loved hunting at the outdoors, etc. He started his career, probably the Latus Clavis, mark of the senator, under Vespasian, 69 to 79, but entered political life as a quaestor, which is a public official in ancient Rome. There were various types of them, used to describe greatly different offices at different times. In 81 or 82 under Titus. Who was Titus? Titus Caesar Vespasianus was Roman emperor from 79 to 81, a member of the Flavian dynasty. Titus succeeded his father Vespasian upon his death. He advanced steadily through the cursus honorum, becoming praetor. Pontius Pilate was his praetor. And in 88 in a quindecimavir, whatever that is, a member of the priestly college in charge of the Sibylline books and the secular games. He gained acclaim as a lawyer and as an orator. Obviously someone that is a public speaker, especially one who is eloquent or skilled. His skill in public speaking ironically counterpoints his cognomen, Tacitus silence, or silence, something like that, and so forth. From his seat in the Senate he became Suffolk consul in 97 during the reign of Nerva, being the first of his family to do so. During his tenure he reached the height of his fame as an orator when he delivered the funeral oration for the famous veteran soldier Lucius Virginius Rufus, or Virginius, and so forth. And these works, this is what people mentioned in the works of Tacitus, history of the Roman Empire, and so forth. Monographs and so forth. Dialogues, literary style. Some comments on that. His prose. His Latin style is highly praised, or was highly praised, and so forth. Sources. He's another person translating Tacitus into English, and so forth. Okay, we have more. Do we have this one? Information? Okay, not looking at that one yet. From the Britannica, Encyclopedia Britannica. And it goes on, basically the same as the prior about him. Maybe a little bit more information there. You can put all these links under this particular video so you can check it out for yourself. Okay, then we have the opposite. Okay, the opposite side of the coin. We're just showing you the pro, and here's the con. Okay, to settle this issue once and for all, is Tacitus reliable, yes or no? This person says they've got very mixed messages on the reliability of Tacitus, with some Reddit users, including at least one alleged historian Redditor, claiming that Tacitus is not reliable due to the fact he wasn't careful with his sources and misspoke regarding Pilate's rank. Other historians, such as Christian NT scholar Michael Licona, as well as atheist Tim O'Neill in his blog, mentions that Tacitus was very careful with his sources and is one of the most reliable ancient historians we have. So which is it? Is Tacitus reliable or not? Is he somewhere in between? Is it true he is willing to twist facts because he loved a good story, as another person, ancient historian, according to them, has told this particular person? Okay, and this person replied, since this is more or less a matter of opinion, this person was happy to reply without major sources. Mods can take, let's read it, mods, take it down if they don't like it. There are absolutely no historians from 1500 or before that are reliable, as we would define them today, and 1500 is a really conservative delineation. History just wasn't done in the same way. Tacitus, however, was definitely one of the best. There's so little to suggest he was a bad historian by his time standards that this person thinks that the burden of proof lies on people to call him not reliable. He's definitely as reliable as the Plinies, who are pretty well regarded, and they all thought highly of one another. As for sources, Tacitus actually uses them unlike many historians of his day. He often referenced the Acta Senatus and the Acta Diurna Populi Romani, something in Latin, some of the most official sources you could get at the time. He also cites his sources directly. Obviously, he's not perfect, but he never really wanted to be. It's just not how things were done. Histories were almost always embellished in the past, and the idea that there is an unbiased history is always false, even today. When you read a history text from today, there will always be a bias to it. Are those people unreliable? And this person answers this generally with a few added points. And it continues, and it's got some references here. And this person says he's a historian of American history, but his research and publications are in religious history, so he maintained interest in all aspects, etc., etc. Was the passage authentic? Most certainly. There are very few reasons to deny it. Does that make it reliable? That's harder to answer. Tacitus also gave an account that Hercules was a real person. This person thought he's talking about what he has heard from followers. Further, he talks about a man curing blindness and about how there was no motivation for falsehood, so the miracle definitely happened. Yeah, supposedly Ptolemy Soter, who created the cult, the Brotherhood of Serapis Christus, cured a man, but he wasn't a reliable saviour, healer, etc., because he would rather chase a woman, something like that along those lines. He neglected his duties. For context, this was a time in history where miracles were incredibly common and many people believed in them. This was a man who believed in miracles, and this person didn't see why he would necessarily doubt what he heard about Christ from Christians when he clearly believed in other mythical events. Well, he didn't actually hear about that persecution from Christians. He came across the record of his procurator, Pontius Pilatus, about how he trialed and then executed the Christos, or the Christ. And there's more information here. Is Tim O'Neill a credible source? As far as this person knows, he's not a scholar, unless he's terribly mistaken, in which case he makes his apologies, and so forth. But Erman, did Jesus exist? Quote, I am not particularly sure about how accurate and reliable Tacitus generally is, but he's certainly not quite reliable when talking about Jesus. In any case, Jesus' mythicism is pretty fringe. The evidence for a historical figure behind Jesus of Nazareth is simply overwhelming, and the reception of this idea in academia is dubious at best. Well, we came across Bart D. Ehrman's misquoting Jesus, and we believe he actually said he believed that, yeah, Jesus did actually exist, but not the Jesus of today, not the gimme Jesus, to put it in words, or put words into his mouth. That's basically what he was saying. He certainly believed that Jesus existed, even though he doesn't believe in God, but he wasn't the Jesus of today that everybody worships today. It's a very different Jesus. Need some more information there. So we go on to the next one, which claims Elizabeth I was one who translated the the writings of Tacitus. London, Reuters. Elizabeth I, one of England's best-loved monarchs, has been revealed to be the translator behind an English version of an ancient text by Tacitus, who described the high politics, treachery and debauchery of the Roman elite. A 16th century translation of the first book of Tacitus' Annals, written in elegant italic hand on ruled paper, has been shown to be Elizabeth I's after an analysis of handwriting, whose style of writing and the type of paper used. The manuscript translation of Tacitus' Annals, now preserved at Lambeth and Palace Library, is the work of Elizabeth I. John Mark Philo wrote in a review of English Studies. Elizabeth goes to some lengths to retain the density of Tacitus' prose and celebrated brevity, Philo wrote. She follows the contours of the Latin syntax with remarkable commitment, even at the risk of obscuring the sense in English. Tacitus, a historian of the Roman Empire, casts Tiberius and Nero as tyrants, and relates the debauchery and corruption of the empire's rulers. Well, we were trying to find out if Tiberius, what we came across it, or heard about Tiberius, was actually true, and we found he was called the Ugly Emperor because he had something wrong with his face, some sort of disease affecting him or something like that, probably syphilis or something. But he stepped down, and supposedly he actually heard about the Christ and he started to believe in it and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, Elizabeth endured a tumultuous childhood, including the disgrace and death of her mother and persecution under her half-sister Mary I, before ascending to the throne aged 25. Elizabeth, known as the Virgin Queen, who ruled from 1558 to 1603, saw off a Spanish attempt to defeat England, though she never married or named a successor. And this is by Guy Falconbridge, edited by William MacLean. Okay. You can read the original article on Reuters, okay, if that's what you wanted to do. So we're going to get to the main meat that we really wanted to show you about Tacitus, because you have the Exodus account of the liberation of the Jews from Egypt as slaves. So we looking at where's the book of him? Okay, I'm going to read it from this particular translation into the English. Cornelius Tacitus, the History, Alfred John Church, William Jackson, Brodribb, editors, or something like that, right? We actually have it in the actual Reader's Digest volume of, or book of Tacitus, but we're going to refer to it from here, read it from here. Okay, this is Tacitus History 5.2, so that would be okay. In this Reader's Digest, it's book 4. This one, book 4, 84 to 86. It's page 84 to 86. Book 4, 84 to 86. Book 5, 1 to 5. So we're looking at book 5. Paragraph 3. Most writers, however, agree in stating, okay, it's basically the same thing as this, right? So we'll go from here Some say that the Jews were fugitives from the island of Crete, who settled on the nearest coast of Africa about the time when Saturn was driven from his throne by the power of Jupiter. So it's some sort of mythical thing, right? Evidence of this is sought in the name. There is a famous mountain in Crete called Ida. The neighbouring tribe of the Yadai came to be called Judai by a barbarous lengthening of the national name. Others assert that in the reign of Isis, the overflowing population of Egypt, led by Hierosolomus and Judas, discharged itself into the neighbouring countries. Many, again, say that they were a race of Ethiopian origin, who, in the time of King Cepheus, were driven by fear and hatred of their neighbours to seek a new dwelling place. Others describe them as an Assyrian horde, who, not having sufficient territory, took possession of part of Egypt and founded cities of their own in what is called the Hebrew country, lying on the borders of Syria. Others again assign a very distinguished origin to the Jews, alleging that they were the Ptolemy, a nation celebrated in the poems of Homer, who called the city which they founded Hierosolima after their name. I'm going to go to the next part of this book, if it allows us. Been a bit stubborn there. Most writers, however, agree in stating that once a disease, which horribly disfigured the body, broke out over Egypt, or ancient Kemet, that King Bokhoros, seeking a remedy, consulted the oracle of Hammon, and was bidden to cleanse his realm and to convey into some foreign land, or kick them out, oust them into a foreign land, this race detested by the gods. That's how they saw them, right? The people, who had been collected after diligent search, finding themselves left in a desert, sat for the most part in a stupor of grief, till one of the exiles, Moyses, or Moses by name, warned them not to look for any relief from God or man, forsaken as they were of both, but to trust to themselves, taking for their heaven-sent leader that man who should first help them to be quit of their present misery. So this is a very different account to the Bible account, right? He's come out and he's seen their misery, so he's told them, look, don't rely on any God or a man, okay, because they've forsaken you all. They've kicked you out, they've left you abandoned, desolate, in need, etc. They don't give us stuff, right? They don't care about us, obviously, right? So they sitting there, shocked, dumbed by the sudden ousting from Egypt, with nothing, no water, no food, nothing. They were told by this Moyses, don't rely on any God anymore or any man, okay? Because they forsook you, right? They've forsaken you. Look where you are. Trust yourselves, okay? And take a heaven-sent leader, that man who should first help them to be quit of their present misery or their anguish, right? So apparently Tacitus is hinting at that this Moses or Moyses really wanted to be someone. He wanted to be their leader, right? So he would do anything for them to become that leader. So they suggested, well, if you can help us get out of this problem, get us water, get us food, then we'll designate you the leader. So they agreed to what he suggested to them, and in utter ignorance began to advance at random. They wandered through the desert, right? Nothing, however, distressed them so much as the scarcity of water, and they had sunk, ready to perish in all directions over the plain, when a herd of wild asses, or donkeys, was seen to retire from their pasture to a rock shaded by trees. Moyses followed them, and guided by the appearance of a grassy spot, discovered an abundant spring of water. This furnished relief for these Jews, right? After a continuous journey for 6 days, on the 7th day they possessed themselves of a country from which they expelled the inhabitants, and in which they founded a city and a temple. This is probably Varus, or the original Sion, Sion, and they created a fortress there, etc. But then apparently, according to the pillars at Luxor or Saqqara, one of the Egyptian scribes, or Moses one, had inscribed on there that they ousted these Jews, Israelites, or Hyksos, because they had this. They used to have pigs, right, which the Egyptians detested, and they used to have them in their house, running around and all that sort of stuff. And the Egyptians apparently didn't like that. They hated that, right? And a plague broke out. Leprosy from these pigs, right? And they were saying that these Jews had something like boob loss or something in their groin, right? They had this plague in their groin, something like that. And then this leprosy spread, and their orator, one of their oracles or seers said, "Hey, you got to get these people out, because if you don't, this disease is going to spread and it's going to kill your people, affect your people and kill your people." So they kicked them out, and then they went to Avaris, built a fortress, all this sort of stuff, and Amos 1 went there to attack them, drive them out, but he got killed in battle. Nobody really knows how, but he just said he died. And then his son tried to get in on the act and revenge his father's death, but he also died. So apparently, the story varies, that the mother, the queen, became queen king, okay, donning a beard, something like that, a false beard. She taught her surviving son, because he had no skills in the art of war, for about 10 or 20 years, probably about 10 years, and schooled him on the art of war, and he went there, eventually conquered them, invaded them, drove them out, was victorious over them, drove them out, chased them to the Red Sea, or the Sea of Reeds. They couldn't run anywhere, so he killed them and drowned a lot of them, supposedly. Yeah, this is according to, I think it's John Henry Clark, or Dr. Ben, that went to Luxor, Saqqara, read those inscriptions, those hieroglyphic inscriptions on the pillars, relating it to, I don't know who he was, whether he was a Roman Catholic or somebody like that, a religioso. So it's a very different story to what's been written in the book of Exodus, that all Christians believe is true. Okay, here it is here. Moses, wishing to secure for the future his authority over the nation, the Israelites, gave them a novel form of worship, opposed to all that is practiced by other men. Things sacred with us, with them have no sanctity. This is Tacitus talking. Things that were sacred with the Romans, with these Jews, these Hebrews, Israelites, they have no sanctity, while they allow what with us is forbidden. In their holy place they have consecrated an image of the animal by whose guidance they found deliverance from their long and thirsty wanderings. They slay the ram, seemingly in derision of Hammon, and they sacrifice the ox, because the Egyptians worship it as Apis, or Apis. They abstain from swine's flesh in consideration of what they suffered when they were infected by the leprosy, to which this animal is liable. It's like boob loss or something like that. It's the Egyptian word for this disease they had in their groin. By their frequent fast they still bear witness to the long hunger of former days, and the Jewish bread, made without leaven, unleavened bread, is retained as a memorial of their hurried seizure of corn. We are told that the rest of the seventh day was adopted, from some other people, because this day brought with a termination of the Torah, supposedly from some other place, right? But here it would have been they were adopting it. They were going to use it, right, in their religion, their traditions, etc., etc. Because this day brought with it a termination of their toils. They weren't slaves anymore. It was the end of their being slaves, and all that gathering of straw, making bricks, all that sort of stuff, according to the Bible. After a while, the charm of indolence beguiled them into giving up the seventh year also to inaction, doing nothing. Okay, but others, no work, like the land, they leave it, right? Maybe it repairs it or something like that, whatever their belief is. After a while, the charm of indolence beguiled them into giving up the seventh year also to inaction or doing nothing. But others say that it is an observance in honour of Saturn, either from the primitive elements of their faith having been transmitted from the Idai, who are said to have shared the flight of that god and to have founded the race, or from the circumstance that of the seven stars which rule the destinies of men, Saturn moves in the highest orbit and with the mightiest power, and that many of the heavenly bodies completed their revolutions and courses in multiples of 7. This worship, however introduced, is upheld by its antiquity, or the other customs from old age, centuries ago, right? That old age. All their other customs which are at once perverse and disgusting owe their strength to their very badness. The most degraded out of other races, scorning their national beliefs brought to them for their contributions and presents. This augmented the wealth of the Jews, as also did the fact that among themselves they are inflexibly honest and ever ready to show compassion, though they regard the rest of mankind with all the hatred of enemies. This is according to Tacitus, right? And his histories and what he's heard, what he's read about them. They sit apart at meals, they sleep apart, and though as a nation they are singularly prone to lust, they abstain from intercourse with foreign women, non-Jews, non-Israelites, the Goy, Gentiles. Among themselves nothing is unlawful. Everything's unallowed, right? It's against the law of God, etc., etc. Right? Circumcision was adopted by them as a mark of difference from other men. Makes them different, right? It's a initiation into that club, right? Into that Israelite circle, Hebrew circle, right? Those who come over to their religion adopt the practice and have this lesson first instilled into them: to despise all gods, to disown their country, and set at naught or nothing their parents, children, and brethren. Okay, they got to abandon them, etc., etc. They are nothing, right? Don't consider them because they're possibly heathens, right? They're not part of the fold or the circle. Still, they provide for the increase of their numbers. It is a crime among them to kill any newly born infant, so they don't believe in abortions, right? They hold that the souls of all who perish in battle or by the hands of the executioner are immortal; they'll live forever. Hence, a passion for propagating their race and a contempt for death. They are wont to bury rather than to burn their dead, as the old Vikings, etc. did. Following in this the Egyptian custom, they bestow the same care on the dead, and they hold the same belief about the lower world, or the underworld. Quite different is their faith about things divine. The Egyptians worship many animals and images of monstrous form. The Jews have purely mental conceptions of deity as one in essence. They call those profane who make representations of God in human shape, idols, etc., out of perishable materials, wood, rocks, etc. They believe that being to be supreme and eternal, neither capable of representation nor of decay. They therefore do not allow any images to stand in their cities, much less in their temples. Okay, so when was it Titus invaded the Jewish temple and put those Jews to the sword, burnt the temple, etc. They put their Roman military standard there. These Jews were like horrified, right? Okay, they wouldn't allow that sort of thing in their temple, right? Or in that area around the temple. It was blasphemy, all that sort of stuff, because they're pagans. They therefore did not allow any images to stand in their cities, much less in their temples. This flattery is not paid to their kings, nor this honour to our emperors. This is Tacitus talking about these Jews in regards to the Roman emperors, and so forth. From the fact, however, that their priests used to chant to the music of flutes and cymbals, so they probably sung their scriptures, and to wear garlands of ivy, and that a golden vine was found in the temple, some have thought that they worship Father Liber, the conqueror of the East, though their institutions do not by any means harmonise with the theory, for Liber established a festive and cheerful worship, while the Jewish religion, according to Tacitus, was tasteless and mean. And some more information here. And it talks about Judea and Jerusalem. And Cneius Pompeius, he subdued the Jews, he was the first to subdue the Jews, etc. Yet the endurance of the Jews lasted till Gisiu. Florus was procurator. He was in charge, right, like Pontius Pilate was. In his time, the war broke out. Cestius Gallus, legate of Syria, who attempted to crush it, had to fight several battles, generally with ill success. Cestius dying either in the course of nature or from vexation. Vespasian was sent by Nero, and by help of his good fortune, his high reputation, and his excellent subordinates, succeeded within the space of 2 summers in occupying with his victorious army the whole of the level country and all the cities except Jerusalem. The following year had been wholly taken up with civil strife and had passed, as far as the Jews were concerned, in action, doing nothing. Peace having been established in Italy, foreign affairs were once more remembered. According to Tacitus, their indignation was heightened by the circumstances that the Jews alone had not submitted. At the same time, it was held to be more expedient, in reference to the possible results and contingencies of the new reign, that Titus should remain with the army. Accordingly, he pitched his camp, as Tacitus had related, before the walls of Jerusalem, and displayed his legions in order of battle. So he's probably going there to invade it. And had a battle with the Jews. And it mentions there were walls surrounding the palace. Titus himself had Rome with all its wealth and pleasures before his eyes. Jerusalem must fall at once, or it would delay his enjoyment of them. But the commanding situation of the city had been strengthened by enormous works, which would have been a thorough defence even for level ground. 2 hills of great height were fenced in by walls, which had been skillfully obliqued or bent inwards, in such a manner that the flank of an assailant was exposed to missiles, rocks and spears and all that sort of stuff, whatever they had, right? The rock terminated in a precipice. The towers were raised to a height of 60 feet, where the hill lent its aids to the fortifications, where the ground fell to a height of 120. They had a marvellous appearance, and to a distant spectator seemed to be of uniform elevation. Within were other walls surrounding the palace, and rising to a conspicuous height, the Tower Antonia, so called by Herod in honour of Marcus Antonius. It had been said by a certain rabbi-style Christian, I've forgotten his name, escaped us at the moment, like got a small pot hat and glasses and a beard, that wailing wall that these Jews tend to look like they're copulating with, according to him, wasn't actually the remaining wall of a temple, but this Tower Antonia, fortress built by the Romans to look over the city of Jerusalem and spot any rebellion, zealots causing some riots, and crush it as soon as they saw it, right? And so forth. The temple resembled a citadel, and it had its own walls, which were more laboriously constructed than the others. Even the colonnades with which it had surrounded formed an admirable outwork. It contained an inexhaustible spring. There were subterranean excavations in the hill, and tanks and cisterns for holding rainwater. The founders of the state had foreseen that frequent wars would result from the singularity of its customs, and so had made every provision against the most protracted siege. After the capture of their city by Pompey, experience and apprehension taught them much. Availing themselves of the sordid policy of the Claudian era to purchase the right of fortification, they raised in time of peace such walls as were suited for war. Their numbers were increased by a vast rabble collected from the overthrow of the other cities. All the most obstinate rebels had escaped into the place, and perpetual seditions were the consequence. There were 3 generals and as many armies. Simon held, that would be Simon Cockburn, held the outer and largest circuit of walls, maybe it was him. John, also called Bagioras, occupied the middle city. Eleazar had fortified the temple. John and Simon were strong in numbers and equipment. Eleazar in position. There were continual skirmishes, surprises and incendiary fires, and a vast quantity of corn was burnt. Before long, John sent some emissaries who, under pretense of sacrificing, slaughtered Eleazar and his partisans and gained possession of the temple. The city was thus divided between 2 factions, till, as the Romans approached, war with the foreigner brought about a reconciliation. They started to rethink themselves, or rethink things. Okay, there's more information on the Romans, etc. Vespasian and Titus. It goes on about the Roman soldier, heavily equipped in that day. Okay, it goes on about Romans and Germans in that day. Okay, not much more here on the Jews in Jerusalem. Okay. Probably at some point they attacked it and conquered and massacred those Jews, etc., etc. Okay. You'd have to look into that particular book to get to the part where they invaded Jerusalem, sacked the temple, burnt it, murdered all these people, and then they were scattered. The Romans took their possessions, their minera, their gold, if they had any, and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so we'll leave it there. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel. It's really opened your eyes. Add your comments below underneath this video in the comment section, and then share it with all your family, friends, neighbours, church friends, Muslim friends, etc. Tell them about us, the Ministry of the Real Truth, and how we bring you the truth, the real truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, in regards to the biblical scriptures.